And so we know that that has also created delays. So thank you all again for your patience as we begin. So just want to, again, welcome everyone and appreciate all of the hard work that you all are continuing to do as we work towards ending homelessness. There are a lot of moving pieces, and we will continue to move forward as a body. And as I always say, we just want to remember what we're here for and what our purpose is. And I know hopefully most of you all have had an opportunity to review the federal strategic plan on ending homelessness through USICH, the All-In Plan. And one of the things that I liked about it is that many of the objectives that we all are striving to do as a community, that is in alignment with the national plan. So, for instance, I know some of their core objectives were really looking at housing, of course, is a solution, housing first, also supportive services, and then evidence-based practices. And so, as you all know, even with the $50 million that we have been allotted through the city, that is part of the work that we are looking for. And so when they talk about what are those three strategic measures to meet that, they talk about, of course, housing and support, but they also talk about housing improvement and collaboration with communities, and then prevention. And so oftentimes we have not looked at prevention as strongly. And so what our hope is that as we move forward as a city, we continue to look at not only what we can do with this $50 million, which is a huge impact, but what does the sustainability of that look like once that funding is gone? And so that's why we're all gathered here, so that we can look at long-term systemic resolutions to what we are experiencing. So definitely know things are moving, as you will see further along in the agenda. Some of the things that we will be addressing, we are at a point to where we are ready to revisit the strategic refresh at the desire of the body. And so hopefully we will get more information about that and how we can move forward, as well as what are some of the other initiatives that we have been tasked to do with HUD-TA. And again, we also understand that in the midst of this, as I've talked about, change is difficult for folks. And so we know that it can be uncomfortable, it can be hard. I was listening to a podcast not long ago, and it really talked about being in the tight spot and how do we navigate that and what does it look like. And so always know that even when we agree, can we agree to disagree, that my intentions is always to come across and to be as helpful and solution focused as possible. So with that being said, I want us to move further along in the agenda and moving forward with our attendance. And so what I am asking today is a little bit different setup. I don't really like it as much, but I also recognize the need for us to be able to record these meetings. So as you all are speaking today, it is imperative that you use the microphones that are before you, and Hannah will be trying to turn those on. So if you can ensure that the microphones are working prior to speaking, so that those who are needing to hear the recording are able to do so in a clear and succinct manner. And so at this time, we will be taking roll. And if you can also identify any conflicts of interest that you may have at the time, that would be most appreciated. Stephen Handy.
Here. With the Navigation Housing Center at McKendree.
Brian Campa. Deidre Childress. Alex Smith. Beth Shin. Deanna Allen Robb.
Present, no conflicts.
Kanitha Patterson.
Present, no conflicts.
Amber Ellis. Sheila Decker.
Present, no conflicts.
Tracy Pekovich. Councilwoman Toombs. Councilwoman Evans. Councilwoman Sepulveda. That name's there. Okay. Will Conley. Waddell Wright. Laura Ferguson Mims.
Present, no conflict.
Vicky Batcher. Wendell Seagroves. Jeff Gibson.
Present. I'm on the board at Room in the Inn.
Thank you. Charles Strobel, Tom Turner.
Present. My employer receives ESG CV funding.
Thank you. And then staff members present, Renee Pratt, Treva Gilligan, Ginger Hauser. Okay, thank you all for that. At this time, if we could ready ourselves for a moment of silence after I read the names of those who have lost their lives while experiencing homelessness since our last meeting. Johnny Ray Bunch, Jeffrey Allen Capps, Rodney Speed, Joey Gann, Lawrence Holly, Antonio Jordan, Anthony Wilson, and Christopher Smalley. If we could just take a moment to remember those lives, please. Thank you all. Next, we will review our January 2023 minutes from our Homelessness Planning Council. I know some of you all, well, all of you all were in receipt of these minutes prior to the meeting, but I'll also give you a moment to review them. And if anyone has any noted corrections, please advise at this time so that we can make those corrections. Any noted corrections at this time? Hearing none, we will move forward in our agenda, and we will have the report from the MHIT Interim Director, April Calvin.
Hello, just checking the mic. Thank you all for coming. I think Jaha already addressed the location change going forward. This is where we will meet the second Wednesday of every month here at this location until at least July. Once we have a new board, we'll make decisions at that point in time. Also, thank you all that were available and made yourselves available for the year-end or mid-year report for board review. Compiling some of that information, had a lot of due dates around that time. So I'm going to compile that information, and then we'll be able to share that with the board in your package going out early next month. Also, I know there's been a lot of questions about the new department for Metro, the Office of Homeless Services, and just want you all to know that Executive Director Renee Pratt has been working diligently to help with standing that up. It should be in place at least by July 1 of 2023, and will begin its fiscal year for 23 through 24. In the process of just building out key positions and an organizational chart and creating a budget for that department. That's when you stand up a whole department, it's a lot that's involved in that. And, you know, there are some other key positions that I typically discuss, but I think I'll move on down to funding. We've had some really great opportunities to come available. The mayor's office, $50 million. I think MDHA may be coming pretty close to sharing the awards for the $25 million of affordable gap loans. The 9 million support services. Those RFPs were due at the end of January. The ranking and the review committee is reviewing that, and more information will be coming shortly. Also, there's been a lot of questions about the cold weather shelter RFP. That RFP has been released, and the due date is February 16th. So there was a pre-offer conference, and a lot of great partners leaned in to listen in. So we will have more information once the applications are turned in. Let's see. So cold weather shelter, currently, while we're talking about cold weather shelter, we have had 32 nights at the 32 degrees below. 27 of those nights is what we were at this point in time is where we were at last year. And then 21 of those days have been at 28 degrees, and 11 of those days have been at 32 degrees. Cold weather shelters running pretty smooth. Let's see, outdoor encampment conversation. Brookmead individuals are still comfortably safe in interim gap housing and also in some of the shared housing options. Some are looking forward to permanent housing options. You may have heard that we've moved forward a little bit with the next location as far as encampments are concerned, which is Wentworth Caldwell Park, and we'll begin assessing and interviewing the individuals there for housing screening options as well. And let's see, I think a lot of this, Jaha maybe shared a little bit about the U6 All-In report. As I review that report and think about where we are as a community, and it's kind of the prime optimal moment right now with our strategic plan refresh and other things that we have going on. Also, I do want to say that there is a state bill that we're watching. Hopefully, Ginger's going to share a little bit more about that. That kind of goes against some best practices and national best practices as well. So there's something that we are watching that just started moving a little bit last night on the state level. I think that's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Quick question, April. This is Deanna. I'm way back here. For those of us who are not familiar with the state bill that you are referencing or the conversation, could you provide just a brief overview?
Yes, and I'll send it out as well. So I would say we're keeping our eye on it along with our Advocates Open Table and then other nonprofits as well. It's State Bill 1334. And three key takeaways would be creating a government-run sanctioned encampment. 2, restricting funds for permanent supportive housing. And another takeaway would be taking away the rights of people experiencing mental health issues. Those are 3 huge takeaways that I noticed in that bill. And I will forward that out to you all directly after this meeting.
For April, and just to clarify, I know Ginger is reminding me that it's Senate bill, so just in case you're looking for that specifically, and I think she'll, again, discuss that a little bit more in her report, so we will definitely make sure that we are on board with following that. Next up, we have Susie Tomey with the MDHA Collaborative Applicant Report.
Thank you, Jaha. Obviously, the mic's working. The biggest news in the last few weeks is the SNOFO, or the Special Notice of Funding Opportunities, was not awarded to Nashville, the unsheltered effort to try and get funding from HUD via that new notice of funding last year. Yes, last year. But two other communities in Tennessee did get awards through the rural set-aside. Jackson got about $1.5 million, and Johnson County, or the Appalachian region, got $250,000, so the state got $1.761. There apparently is an additional opportunity. HUD has mentioned that they will have a second wave of awards. I have no idea whether we've got a chance at getting that funding, but I do think that the process that the whole community kind of went through, even if we don't get money in the second wave, it's a win. There were partnerships forged, there were collaborations, there was work done. We had a whole lot more involvement by people with lived experience. So we can draw on the lessons learned and be positive that we can move forward if there's another opportunity in the future, but let's keep our fingers crossed that perhaps we'll see some funding in that second wave. I'm going to quote from Texas about what they have here, if I can just open my phone here. Because I think they summarized it well. They said that they're disappointed but not discouraged. They had some rural set-asides too. They said there were 36 COCs across 27 states nationally that received the Rural Set-Aside Award, but only 14 continuums across 12 states that received the Unsheltered Set-Aside Award. And 4 COCs nationally received both the unsheltered and the rural set-aside. So it was very, very competitive, and the unsheltered funding did tend to go towards cities that are huge, have huge populations of unsheltered homeless folks. So more next time if there is funding announced to Tennessee or to Nashville in the second wave. The COC regular competition, we haven't received any word of awards yet. The point in time count is now behind us in the rearview mirror, although it's not so much with Hannah. The count was on the 26th of January. It went well. No one was hurt. No one slid down embankments and broke their legs. Lots of volunteers were involved in the unsheltered effort, and Hannah and her HMIS team are busy getting housing inventory information and looking at the unsheltered numbers and the sheltered numbers to get at the actual final number, but that takes some time. Appreciate all of their efforts. And then last but not least, there is, per the charter, every 5 years, a requirement that the general membership designate the collaborative applicant and the HMIS lead. 2023 is that year, and we are going to have one called special meeting of the general membership on the 22nd of January. Kelly reminded me that I put a Thursday in the agenda, or the body of the text. It is actually a Wednesday. I'll send a correction out. Wednesday, January 22nd from 9 until noon. Pardon me? Thank you. Okay. Wednesday, February 22nd, thank you. 9 until noon. We're trying to get a location where the meeting can be recorded. So the location's TBA, and we're going to have the pleasure of Steve Berg, who's Chief Policy Analyst for the National Alliance to End Homelessness, is flying in to go over best practices and share sort of what's happening across the country in terms of collaborative applicants. The collaborative applicant is basically the entity that the community selects or designates to write the application each year for HUD funding, and then to collect the applications from the local projects and submit that. It also, since COC planning funds have been a possibility through HUD, is the one entity that can apply for those planning funds. It has been at MDHA, and there are conversations going on about it perhaps fitting better under the city, under MHID, or with the new Office of Homeless Services. And I invite you to come to that meeting and learn more about what the collaborative applicant is, and ask questions. There is a form attached to the information I emailed most of you all, and if you didn't get it, please let me know. That I would encourage you, if you got questions prior to that meeting on the 22nd, to submit them to me, I think by the 14th, so that we can get answers to questions you already have and bring those to the meeting and make it a productive one. Thank you.
Okay, at the beginning of your report, you mentioned that Nashville didn't receive this funding. Do we know why we didn't receive it and what we can do to improve it?
We could ask for a debrief, and the Texas folks they mentioned that in their article as well. We started out the gate hobbling a bit because there were a potential maximum of 30 bonus points assigned to communities that had very large unsheltered populations, and we didn't even make one of those 30 points. So that could be one of the reasons right off the bat.
Any other questions? I do think one of the things that when we look at what was a positive outcome of this is the amount of collaboration between the various agencies to put together the snowfall. And so it is my hope that we will continue to look at that strong collaboration and look at other levels of grant funding, whether that's on the federal level, that may not always be related to just the continuum of care funding, but who knows, we could one day get a SAMHSA grant or some other sort of funding. Those are the types of things I think we do need to be mindful of as we look at sustainability. So I think that it was a great start, and we just need to keep that momentum going and figure out how, as a community, we can collaborate and continue to seek those funding sources. So thank you to all of those who were involved in that effort. I know particularly the shelter committee did a lot of hard work on that, and all of you all who were participants in that. So again, thank you all so much for that. And again, for those who participated in the point in time count, I've heard some people held hands going up hills. I know my team, we made it through as well. So until next year, again, thank you all for that. Moving forward to the HMIS monthly data report, Hannah?
Just a question.
I'm sorry, yes.
As we talk about collaboration, are there strategic steps, intentional strategic steps to keep this momentum going beyond a grant application process?
That's a good question. I think that part of what I would like to see from the board is for us to have those conversations, and that may be something that the collaborative applicant can really help us to spearhead, because I do think that we do need to begin to look at that. So what I will say is, if it can be noted in the minutes, that we consider what would be the plan in doing that, and that may be something as a possibility that we look at in terms of our strategic refresh at some point. Related to that? Okay, Hannah, the HMIS monthly data report, please.
Hi, everybody. We are talking about this report, our regular monthly report. This is for the months of February 2022 through January 2023. 1,849 people experiencing homelessness were housed from that period. That is a 5.4% decrease from the same period the previous year. Although it is a decrease, January was a good month for housing for Nashville. 206 people moved from homelessness into permanent housing, which is the highest it's been for a month since March of last year, so that's good. And another thing I wanted to highlight was that we had 12 veterans move into permanent housing with VASH vouchers, so permanent supportive housing vouchers, which is, again, the biggest month we've had in, I think, almost a year for people moving in with those, and that's a really powerful resource for veterans, so that's great. It was actually honestly hard for me to find negative things to point out for things that aren't going well because it was a really good month, so that's great. We did only have one person move into permanent supportive housing or other permanent housing during the month, and since that's one of the best housing resources we have, we always want that to potentially be higher, so that is one thing I wanted to highlight there. But overall, it was a really successful month for people moving out of street outreach into permanent housing in particular. Most of those move-ins were through rapid rehousing, we can see 60.7, but a variety of other sources as well. Yes.
On the housing exits by destination, which I'm really into, they have a section here where it says own. So I'm assuming that's people who are actually going into home ownership.
Yes.
Correct? What are the actual numbers on that? How can we do more to encourage that? Because personally, living in affordable housing, it's not the best, but I know how to make it the best. by saving money? And how can we get these projects to get into home ownership? How can we further push those?
I don't know if I'm the expert on how we can encourage it, but I can talk to you about the numbers, which I think there were 10 in the past year, which is pretty good. I think commonly those are particularly veterans who are staying in transitional housing programs and purposely saving funds for the period they're allowed to stay in those programs until they can exit. I think that's a common situation where that happens. But I do know like the Barnes Fund and things funds, low income home ownership programs. I don't know a ton about how those work though, but that is one option we can sort of look into more.
And where,
And then I'm gonna come back to you.
Sorry, he couldn't see me back
I know. That's the setup with this, so no problem.
I just had a question about like HMIS and coordinated entry. And so I'm trying to find out, and it might be a question for the meeting that's happening tomorrow with MDHA, because it is a kind of a startup type of question, I would say. How do you get where you can start to put people into that system? Because I kind of currently have 4 emergency fires and I don't have any way to put them in or, get them started. So I'm just trying to figure out that starting point.
So for emergency situations, I would recommend doing your best to get them connected to another organization who can already do that while you work with them, like Metro Social Services or someone else. But for long term, if you want to be able to continue to do that, you can send me an email or I can email you and we can get started on that process. There's a short application that an agency fills out to be able to access HMIS, and then the HMIS Oversight Committee has to approve that agency to have access, and then we can get started on it.
Hannah, where does the number show up for the navigation center transitions? Where are those numbers?
So the mobile housing navigation centers, we consider emergency shelter on this. So on the second page, you can see information about emergency shelters and the people that they're serving. So anyone who's staying in a mobile housing navigation center is reflected there. And then as they exit those mobile housing navigation centers to different permanent housing options, that'll show up on the permanent housing number.
I appreciate the enormous success in housing people in January. I note that only 26 of them came from emergency shelters, if I'm correct in looking at page 2. And I'm hoping that the push to close encampments is not leading us to ignore the folks who are in emergency shelters because of racial equity. We know that people in emergency shelters are more likely to be African American, people in encampments are more likely to be white, and the push to end encampments, to the extent that it leads us to not put as much energy into getting folks out of emergency shelters, is a racial equity issue.
The only thing I'll add on that is that if you look at that sort of history of housing from emergency shelters, while 26, we would want that to be a lot higher from emergency shelters, it is fairly in line. So at least in January, we didn't sort of, by working with Brookmead, risk not housing people from shelters. It was in line with where we've been. But yes, I think paying attention to that is important.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, Hannah. Moving on to the MHEAD Director position update, Renee Pratt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. The Executive Committee reviewed 9 applicants of the minimum preferred category. Of the 9 applicants, 5 were selected for interviews. The Executive Committee made a recommendation to interview the top 3 candidates initially. And we are conducting those interviews and completing them this week. So hopefully by next week, we'll have more information to come, and hopefully a selection will be made, hopefully by the end of this month. Thank you.
Any questions for that? Okay. Moving forward to the mayor's office report, Ginger Hauser.
Somebody ripped the mic off here. So anyway, good morning. Couple of things. 2.5 weeks ago, I think, the mayor and I were in D.C. for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. One thing we did do while we were up there is meet with HUD, and specifically Richard Cho, who's involved in homelessness issues, to talk about how they can support us more, and specifically made a request that the technical assistance that had sort of pulled back, that we encourage the feds to allow them to work with us again and support us. So we began kind of a dialogue at the federal level, and I was pleased about that. Obviously, with the mayor's announcement of not running again, that's sort of, you all know, the biggest news, right? I am pleased, and hopefully this body is as well, that when he announced he's not running, when he talked about what he wants to really focus on in the remaining months of his term, was focused on both affordable housing and also homelessness. So I was really pleased that of the 3 or 4 priorities he mentioned, the work that you all have done and the council's allocation were part of that priority for him. So I'm delighted about that. The Senate and House bill that was discussed earlier, the House bill number is 1192. There is a great deal of concern statewide about that bill. If you look at the sponsors, those are the same 2 sponsors from Cookeville that sponsored the criminalization bill. So that's Senator Bailey and Representative Ryan Williams. So strategically, we are watching the bill. It has been filed. It has not been put what's called on notice, so it is not scheduled right now to go to any subcommittees or committees. Right now, it's just a piece of legislation among, 1,500 that have been filed and may or may not go anywhere. What I would encourage you all that work in this space is, if you have counterparts in the Cookeville area, that conversations with them is probably paramount. They're going to know how the legislation came about, knowing if the advocates in Cookeville are supportive of this, or are they working with the sponsors to express their concern. That is going to make a great bit of difference kind of behind the scenes to know, for example, is there COC in the Cookeville area working with those sponsors about their concerns or not? Because at the end of the day, all politics is local, and I would encourage you to reach out to your friends in that part of the world. What we will be doing is the County Services Association, other advocates all across the state have been emailing about this. We will engage more strategically if it actually begins to move. Right now, it's just been filed. I think the other piece that I want to, with my colleagues, do some digging around is to see, is there anything in the THDA budget, which, as the legislation is written, provides them the opportunity to potentially manage or run themselves sanctioned encampments, and to see, can we find out if anything was put in the proposed budget. That also is sort of a clue about whether this is a serious proposal or not. So we'll be watching it. It hasn't moved at all right now, but I think those are the kinds of things you can be doing right now, sort of quietly behind the scenes, and we will be doing that as well. And if it starts moving, obviously, we will let you know that, and this body, and keep you up to date on what's going on. The other meeting I wanted to mention, and I believe April was a part of this meeting, I think Stacy was a part as well, is in late January. We had national and regional representatives of Lowe's meet with the mayor and I think several council members in Nashville individually. They, in particular, wanted to go, they have 5 locations in Davidson County. 3 of those are places in which there are encampments. And they have a national strategy around this. They actually have resources, wanted to talk to us about how we work together with them, seek some grant funding opportunity through, I think, kind of the foundation side of Lowe's, but also how we can strategically work with that corporate entity on homelessness. They invited Walmart to the table, so it was a room full of Metro Police from all across the Davidson County and a very large contingent of Lowe's employees from all over, and they invited Walmart. Walmart was there, mainly in a listening posture, so I got the sense that they may not have a national strategy on this, but they were there. So I think it does provide an opportunity for this body, as you talked about collaboration, are there corporate entities that can be partners with us and can offer funding, can offer support as we go forward. So I wanted to let you all know about that. They did meet, I believe, with most of the council members where they have Lowe's locations, where they have these concerns while they were in town as well. So I just wanted to let you all know about that in case you were not aware.
Any questions for Ginger? And just to let you all know, I am a member of the HEART COC, which is the continuum of care that covers Crossville and Cookeville. And we have a meeting on Thursday, so I will be sure to hopefully be able to give you all an update in terms of what their stance is related to this bill and if they have any action or advocacy pieces that we can help participate in. So more to come with that as well. I'm sorry, Deanna.
So just a brief question for Ginger. My ears really perked up when you are saying, are there corporate partners that we could work with and start pursuing? In my very limited experience working with corporations, the first place that I would think to start is the Chamber of Commerce, but I'm curious just to hear what would be a good starting place in terms of how we might consider an approach?
Thank you for the question. And I probably should have mentioned that in addition to Lowe's and Walmart, the executive director of the Retail Association was also in the room. And I've had one follow-up correspondence with the association executive director to talk about, is there an opportunity, since you have 2 large retailers at the table who are engaged in this issue? My guess is entities like a Kroger or Home Depot. We didn't mention Home Depot in the meeting with Lowe's because they're competitors, but are there other big retailers that would be members of that association that then we can call upon? Councilman Dreffel also had a really fantastic suggestion, is that the Greater Nashville Hospitality Association may be a wonderful place where I think collaboration could occur. I don't know if you know his background, but he spent many years in the hotel industry and talked about, as we begin a strategy of moving folks from temporary into more permanent housing opportunities, are there things like furniture from hotels not being used anymore, or linens that are just slightly used but aren't able to be used by the hotel anymore? Are there opportunities to have a collaboration like that in a more strategic way with all of the hotels in Nashville? And then I also, not discuss with the council member, but as I think about those next steps to permanency and self-sufficiency, are there opportunities for employment with both of those, whether that's the Retail Association or Hospitality Association? I know that that there are definitely restaurateurs, there are hotels, there are retailers that have been open to hiring folks that are unhoused and also criminal backgrounds and other things like that. Those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. Certainly you all may have many others. I do know that sometime back the mayor did meet with the Community Foundation to talk about as we look at capitalizing on this $50 million, and maybe can you take that with private sector and association partnership to really elevate this into sustainability? They had some initial conversations around that. So I just lay that out there, that those may be some wonderful opportunities as we go forward, looking at pulling more folks in to really amplify the $50 million and the strategic plan that you all will be working on in the future. Is that helpful? Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ginger, for that. Moving forward to our membership committee update, Grant Winter. Sure.
Hello, good morning. For those who I don't know, my name is Grant Winter. I work at Safe Haven Family Shelter, and for the purposes of today, I am the chair of the membership committee of the COC. I just wanted to it's been a while, I think, since the membership committee has given an update, so I just want to remind you what our role is as a committee. We do track and manage the membership of the general COC, as well as attendance and voting rights. But we're also charged with making sure that we are building a robust and diverse membership, one that is engaged and informed, making sure our membership reflects our community and has a strong participation with folks with lived expertise. And so to that end, as a small but mighty committee of 3 right now, always looking for new members, we're working on strategies to better do that. We're reaching out to new members as they join, which we hadn't been doing as much in the past, getting them on Susie's listserv, which is always what everyone is looking to do to get all those emails, and letting them know about the committee work as well and how to get involved. And so we also started new member orientations to go over the system structures and stakeholders and to be able to answer questions. We held the first one this last fall. We had a great turnout. We got really great feedback on things that we can do the next time around, and we're planning to do another one this spring. And the last thing I wanted to mention is a kind of a plea and encouragement to HPC members to become COC members. I do think, I wasn't able to find an updated current membership online, but my estimate is less than 50% of the HPC are COC members. I do think that more involvement creates more connection between the two bodies. And I would love to see more involvement on the committee work. Ideally, one HPC member on each of the working committees I think would be wonderful. And I think April might have sent out a link to the membership application. If not, I can send that out as well to any member who wants to join. Like Susie said, we're meeting later this month, which is an important conversation, but we meet every other month. We're meeting more regularly, so it's a lot easier to know when the meetings are, and I think it would just be really great to have more participation from the Planning Council. So, thank you.
Any questions for Grant? If not, thank you, Grant, for your hard work. You all have heard the ask, and so we know we have February 22nd, and then I believe the next Continuum of Care meeting is March 16th, and those are typically at 10:30 a.m. So if you all are able to attend, or at least join and attend as you are able, that would be appreciated. Moving forward to our strategic plan refresh, which is Hannah and Jeff.
Thank you. As you may recall, we worked to revamp the strategic plan on I would say, a conceptual, broad level, and the body asked that we revisit that task to get more in the weeds about specific action items. Hannah has been spearheading that effort along with assistance from Dr. Shin, which we really appreciate. And has made really good progress. I'll let Hannah speak a little bit to some of the metrics that she shared with you. I think the next step for this effort is for us to convene a small committee, or I guess, yeah, I was going to say subcommittee, but I guess committee is the right word, to really get down in the weeds and draft this thing as a body. that we can bring back to the HPC for review, consideration, and ultimately adoption. I know Dr. Shin is willing to serve on the committee. If there are others who would like to serve on the committee, we'd certainly welcome any assistance we could get. I would like to keep the committee relatively small so that we can be nimble and make efficient progress. If anybody in here knows they would like to be on the committee, Stephen would be a great addition. But if anybody would like to be on the committee, you can raise your hand now. You can let Jaha know after the meeting. And I'm actually seeing some talk up here. Do we need to do anything formal to set up a committee?
We do. We will need to vote from the body if you all are in agreement. So I'm hearing from the motion from the committee is that an ad hoc committee be formed to help support the strategic refresh efforts. So I would need a second from the floor and then to know the pleasure of the body. I have a second from Vicky. Your last name just left my head that fast. Batcher, I'm sorry. And any questions? All those in favor of the ad hoc committee to support the efforts of the strategic refresh, please raise your hand. For aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And so at this point, we will entertain those individuals who want to be a part of that committee. Or you can, if we have volunteers, I also have the right to. Okay, so we have three right there. We have Stephen Handy, Vicky Batcher, Kenitha Patterson, Beth Shin.
And I'm happy to serve on the committee as well.
Well,
that may be assumed.
I didn't think you were voluntold. Okay. So for the purpose of the minutes, that's Jeff Gibson, Kenitha Patterson, Vicky Batcher, Stephen Handy, Beth Shin, and of course, staff member Hannah.
And as far as setting that meeting, is that something, April, we can coordinate with you? Yeah. Okay. What I'd probably, well, we can communicate offline, but what I'd probably like to do is set up maybe a Saturday morning, several-hour session to knock out as much as we can, if that would work for everybody. But we can talk.
He's the committee.
Okay, thank you.
So just for a point of reference, I am supposed to appoint the committee chair, but I was making an assumption that it would be Mr. Gibson. But Mr. Gibson, do you mind continuing to sort of chair and facilitate? Thank you.
Sorry, I stopped short. So Hannah, if you, like I said, Hannah has been working with Dr. Shin on some preliminary metrics that we might use in this effort. I think she's done a really great job, and Hannah was going to give you a very brief overview of that effort.
And that information is in your packet before you as she's going over it.
Hello again, everyone. So this first page is just a brief outline of the metrics that are proposed that could be a good overarching metrics for measuring the success of the strategic plan that I talked with Dr. Shin about. These are based on things that are stated in the strategic plan, particularly that we want homelessness to be rare, brief, one time, and that as a city, we want to be housing focused. So there are metrics that go along with each of those things. They are the annual point in time count and several system performance measures that come from data in HMIS. These are already things that we're measuring and reporting to HUD every year. The system performance measures are an annual report that we do that are actually due at the end of February for the past year. So probably next month, I'll be talking about those with you. So to measure if homelessness is rare, it's to look at the point in time count, how many people are experiencing homelessness on a single night, and the number of sheltered homeless persons according to the system performance measures. To measure brevity, to look at the length of time persons remain homeless, which is again a system performance measure that comes from HMIS. To measure one time, we can look at returns to homelessness, so the extent to which persons are returning to homelessness within 6 to 12 months, and then again within 2 years. Again, that's a system performance measure that we report to HUD. And then finally, for housing focused, to look at our successful placements in permanent housing as a city. These are all metrics that also match with the federal strategic plan. The federal government is measuring success across the country using these same metrics. And again, they're all things we already do. Additionally, there was a race equity focus in the strategic plan, so we recommended that we should be looking at all of these metrics by race. If you flip to the second page, there's a draft proposal of what a quarterly report on these metrics could look like. You'll notice I didn't quite get race in this report on all of them yet, so that's why it is a draft. So that's hopefully something we can work with the committee on. I wanted it to be simple and readable, but we also need to make sure we're reporting on everything that we need to know. So this is some of the information. This is correct information for the period reported, and we could report that quarterly, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of finalize what these metrics might look like with the help of the committee.
Deanna.
I got a good night's sleep last night, hence all the conversation today. This may be off topic, and if so, I completely understand being asked to hold it. I did hear the focus around race and including racial ethnic identity in the data that we are collecting, but my brain was asking the question, are we prioritizing for people actually moving in or receiving housing resources? Is that one of the indicators that we are prioritizing? And that's more of an implementation question than it is data question, but.
So we don't prioritize based on race. That would be like a violation of fair housing.
Absolutely.
But I know that Sally is leading a community stakeholder group to review assessment and prioritization processes for coordinated entry. And there are certainly ways, I know that in other communities, you can't use race as a prioritization method, but are there proxies for that kind of information, or how does that play out so that you can still do your best to make sure people who have historically faced racism and discrimination are being prioritized for housing appropriately?
Any other questions? Vicky?
On the bottom right under Nashville will be housing focused. I kept hearing a lot over the last few months that it was housing first approach. Are we not doing that anymore?
Oh, we forgot my own microphone. Yes, this was just language I took from the plan itself. It said housing focused, but it certainly doesn't conflict with housing first. Housing first is housing focused, I would say. But we could change it if we think it's confusing also.
Dr. Shin.
Thanks to Hannah for putting all this together. It's really important. And just wanted to point out that these system performance measures are part of what we get scored on in our annual applications for funds to HUD. And so having the Metro focused on the same things that HUD is evaluating us on in deciding whether we get funds is a really important thing. So thank you, Hannah, for suggesting that be the way to go here.
Any other questions? Just another point, Deanna, one of the things when you're looking at the race equity, as Hannah said, we can't do prioritization on that, but one of the things I know historically we have looked at, so for many who don't know, even going back to Kanitha, that through coordinated entry, there are specified entry points for folks, and so one of the ways we may look at that is how, one, are we educating the community about what those entry points are, what is coordinated entry, and where do oftentimes people of color go when they are experiencing a crisis? And have we made those connections? So again, when we think about collaboration and how do we create a more equitable system, those are the types of things we want to just sort of keep in our forefront of our minds. So for those who are on those committees and those who have an interest in that, and as we look at this strategic refresh to be in alignment, we just want to keep those things in our thoughts and forefront. So for the next portion of this agenda, as we move on to our board matters and committee updates, just because it has somewhat to do with me as well. I am going to actually surrender this portion of the meeting to our vice chair, and then we'll resume my chairman duties after this piece of business has been transacted. So at this point, I will turn it over to Vice Chair Mims.
Thank you, Chairwoman Jaha. The next item on our agenda speaks to the Homelessness Planning Council audit follow-up. If you'll review the minutes from the January 11th meeting, there was a request for an audit seeking an independent investigation into the recent resignations. The minutes read, seeking an investigation by any agency outside of Metro to find answers and build trust, and express concern about the email response to the recent board resignation, and seeking chair resignation. I believe that was brought forward by you, Ms. Batcher. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? We now have a quorum at this meeting. Is there a motion regarding how we want to proceed? Yes.
I would like.
Your mic.
I would like to make the motion to have a subcommittee, I'm not sure of the language here, but to look into some of these resignations. I did receive the email with the actual email with the resignation. My purpose for this is the response to a resignation. 2:30 this morning, I was thinking out loud, and I was thinking of a softer approach, but I still think these resignations need to be looked into. Okay, specifically Carrie Gornick and the response that was made. I had come up with an idea of a softer approach. Sorry, I had a bleeding thought there about having a form response.
May I just interject for a moment? Before we can have discussion, there has to be a motion. So is there a motion that you want to put forward before the body?
Yes, I would like a motion put forward to have the resignation of Carrie looked into.
So state the motion again for the record, just so that I'm clear.
I would like to have a committee, subcommittee, whatever you want to do, look into, I guess, all of the resignations, not just Carrie, but all the resignations that have happened, as well as the response to it. I think there was some inappropriate.
Before we go into discussion, I want to get the motion settled. Okay, so the motion, it's been moved that there be an investigation. An investigation is your motion. An investigation regarding resignations and the response to the resignation.
From the HBC, yes.
From the HBC. That is the motion. It's been moved by Ms. Batcher. Is there a second on the floor? Mr. Wendell, Mr. Wendell, right? It's been seconded. So now I think we're open to discussion on the motion before the floor. Yes. Representative Sepulveda, right?
Council member.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Councilwoman.
State is doing a lot right now. I'd rather be here with y'all. So I think it would make sense for this to go before the Ethics Committee. My opinion, the Ethics Committee looks at our employees, our boards and commissions, and they have a pretty solid board makeup, and we just added 2 more members to it. We will be adding 2 more members to it. The Tennessee Immigrant Rights and Refugee Coalition will be adding a member. The NAACP will be adding a member. We have
a council member that sits on there. I think it's a pretty balanced board, in my opinion, and it wouldn't cost any money, and that's usually how the process goes for other matters. So I would recommend amending the motion to specifically state that this go before the Ethics Committee.
Okay, I think we have a point of order from legal.
Well, it's just this comment. You may go down that pathway and the determination be made that the Ethics Committee doesn't have jurisdiction or doesn't have the ability to explore what you're seeking. I'm not answering that that will be the outcome, but many matters that are referred to the Ethics Committee are turned aside. So it's just a consideration for you all to take into account with that amendment. There would be a legal opinion coming from Metro Legal advising the Ethics Committee. I wouldn't be part of that, but there is a process before matters referred to the Ethics Committee actually proceed. So just, that's for your information.
And Derek, is that something that we would hear back from pretty quickly? I mean, if we make the referral, does the Ethics Committee just make a jurisdictional decision on the front end?
It would be made on the front end, but I couldn't answer as to whether that would take a month, 2 months. You know, it could take a little bit of time in any event.
And I believe Councilwoman Sepulveda said that that is a committee that has the responsibility for looking at the council and commissions. Is there some concern that it would not have jurisdiction over this matter?
Yeah, the Homeless Planning Council it's created by Metro, but it's not a Metro board or commission. You're a planning council of the continuum of care membership. So it's a little, and frankly, I haven't explored the jurisdiction issue at all, but thinking out loud, there could be, difficulties of whether it does have jurisdiction over this. And the other part of their analysis is whether the complaint or concern is actually an ethics complaint. You know, that to call something ethical or unethical doesn't necessarily, it has to match up with what they actually are authorized to explore. You may call something an ethical violation, but it may not be in the judgment of that body. So
I'm not sure in terms of order. Was there an amendment proposed, and has there been a second to that? Then I have a question.
There is a proposal by Councilwoman Sepulveda, a clarification from legal. I don't think there was any acceptance of the friendly amendment, or was there? I missed it if there was. Okay, so at this point, it's just discussion. So Pastor Handy, and then we'll come back to you, Councilwoman Sepulveda.
So I'm new to this process, and I'm thinking this can't be the first time board members have resigned. That is the case. Has this practice been a part of this orientation, or is this something new, and why would we think it would be new under these circumstances? So any clarity around, if we've had board members to resign, do we typically do an investigation? Or is this something new that we're doing, and why would we be doing it under this watch?
I'm not privy to the historical, I'm just not, being relatively new to the council. You can speak to that. Is that April?
Yes.
Yes.
So we've had, in the last 2 years, we've had a total of 4 resignations, and we've not done an investigation. We typically accept their emails as the resignation as it states.
Okay. I told Councilwoman Sepulveda I'd come back to her, and then Ms. Batcher, back to you.
Yeah.
Did I say Congresswoman? I'm sorry. I keep elevating. I'm sorry. Councilwoman.
No worries. So I could see the ethics board does have a specific focus. Maybe if we have an answer from Metro Legal sooner rather than later, we could figure out if that would be the best course, or as a backup, if not, pursuing the path of an independent investigator for the motion. It's just a thought. But if we would have a timeline of when we would have an answer from Metro Legal, I think that would be great. I do know that the ethics committee mainly focuses on a lot of financial, ethical questions that come up. I don't know if this necessarily would fit, but something to ask Metro Legal.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion that's before the body? Oh, Vicki, I'm sorry. Vicki, you again.
First of all, I apologize. I didn't want this to be this complicated. I thought it was a simple, cut and dry thing of getting 5 people from this board to look into the last resignation, as well as the other resignations, to see if there was some sort of pattern. I get it. People can't always fulfill their obligations. Then they have to resign. The words that Carrie used in her email gave me great concern. And as a member of the Homeless Planning Council, I would like to see those people that sit on this council form a subcommittee, whatever you want to call it, not so much the ethics board, but looking into this and finding out, was there inappropriate action done? And if there was inappropriate action that was being committed, I think then we should take it up a step further to where legal would get involved. So tell me if I'm off base. Tell me if this just ain't gonna work. Let me know.
Right now, there's a motion on the floor that there be an investigation into the prior resignations and the resulting response. That motion has a second. There's been discussion. Any additional discussion?
Well, I think what Vicki just said might go some way into clarifying my question, which is I'm not sure what we're voting on. If we're voting on an investigation in the abstract, I think there's some logistical issues we need to address before I can make an informed vote. If what Vicki is suggesting is that this body form a subcommittee to investigate Carrie's resignation, maybe that, if you're willing to amend your motion, that may be a simpler motion to get through. But I'm without that amendment, I'm personally confused about what we're voting on.
Did you want to?
Point of clarification, the original motion was for a subcommittee formation.
A subcommittee, okay, I misspoke.
Of this body.
Yes.
Okay.
I may have just misunderstood. I apologize.
I think I stated it incorrectly. A subcommittee of this body to, I think the motion didn't just include Carrie's, but all resignations and response. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Is there a call for the question? Do we call for the question? Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed signify by raising your hand. And someone else, please, someone count with me as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those abstaining. Abstentions are 1.
What I'm trying to figure, I guess I should I've recused myself from the conversation. Because part of the motion also deals with me.
I'm presiding. Do I vote? 5 in favor, 4 opposed, 1 abstention. There's 13 of us total, so we're still missing. Yes. 2 abstentions. I missed a hand. That would be me. I'm going to abstain. It's still 12. Okay, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put my math skills to the test. All those in favor, please, of moving forward with convening a subcommittee to investigate the recent resignations and the resulting response, please signify by raising your hand. All those in favor. And someone please help me count. 1, 2. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that confirmed? Is that 5? Okay. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those abstaining. 1, 2, 3, 4. Gotcha. Yes, exactly. Okay. I do. I am abstaining. Yes. So the motion is a simple majority. The motion does not carry. The motion does carry. I'm sorry. The motion carries. Yeah, the majority of those voting and not abstaining. So there will be a subcommittee created to investigate the recent resignations and the resulting response. I think our charter indicates that when we have an ad hoc committee, let me just read it to be sure I'm correct. It is the duty of the Planning Council Chair to make appointments of all committees and committee chairs deemed necessary for the operation of the COC. And then when we go to the section on ad hoc committees, each ad hoc committee is expected to be time limited and focused on the accomplishment of the task for which it is appointed. I think we should take some time to determine who those committee members are, since this action was just taken today. I will confer with legal about the best way to proceed, since I'm not actually the chair in convening that committee. Yes, Vicki?
If I could make a suggestion for the members, make sure they're people with no conflict. Okay, I think
so noted. Thank you all for your patience.
Are you?
I was trying.
Are you addressing the resignation?
It's been brought to my attention that the other part of the concern brought to the body at the last meeting, Ms. Batcher, surrounds the chair's resignation.
At this time, I would like to present a softer approach, okay? So many times in businesses, you hear that's a good coaching opportunity. Going forward, I would like to see a form letter drawn up for those people that we are accepting the resignations from. And without embarrassing anybody, have it not personal, because I think the the response to the resignation was extremely personal.
Okay. Is there a motion? I'm new at this. Bear with me. I want to be sure before we get into discussion if there's a motion on the floor.
I would like to make a motion that going forward, a form receipt of your resignation be drawn up and to be used to end conflicts like this, end situations like this.
Okay. So I think the clarification I'm getting is at the prior meeting, you indicated you wanted there to be a call for the resignation of the chair. Is there a motion relative to that concern?
Referring to that concern, I think that has to wait until the subcommittee has met, determined if there was any inappropriate action, and then go from there.
Okay. So no motion at this time. Okay.
Defer it.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Batcher. Pastor Handy.
I think we have to be careful how we make assertions and assumptions about how we read into letters or emails and making a comment personally how you felt about it. I think we've got to stay away from that language and just keep whatever was written, let it go to the committee, because when we make assertions, we can waver and lead people down a certain path, and I just don't think that's healthy. So I think the committee and this council needs to be careful how we make assertions about what we think. This is not about what we think. This is an open forum to have conversations. So you can't vet a certain pathway, which creates tension, and we don't need any more of that.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I will expeditiously turn this microphone back over.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate your help with that. Moving forward in the agenda, we are at the point if Sheila Decker and the Consumer Advisory Board public comments portion, and those comments are also in your packet before you.
There's a sheet in your packet of the January public comments that were received. I don't generally read these, so I'm not going to change that unless somebody asks that I do it. But it is here for everyone to read. I believe that the majority of the comments that we received were in reference to the issue that we just addressed. So there were also a couple of additional comments that we received that were not in relation to any Homeless Planning Council business. So those were referred to Metro Homeless Impact Division to respond. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome.
Moving forward to our story of progress, and that will be given by Ms. Browden.
Am I on? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Kimberly Bowden. I'm with the Homeless Impact Division, the Landlord Engagement Department. We are very excited about the work that, we're doing in that department. Just some great stories of success. I think that it's a big thing to speak to. We had 77 in the year of 2022. So from February 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, we had 77 sign-on bonus incentives that were dispersed. So in layman's terms, it's just that we had 77 households that exited homelessness and were able to be assisted through the landlord engagement sign-on bonus incentives that are available. So that is definitely a story of success. 77 is quite a few people. And so towards the end of December 15th, we did roll out our new landlord incentive programs. So now the sign-on bonus incentives are on a per unit basis. They're varying amounts based on the number of bedrooms that a unit can accommodate. So those are, and we've increased the incentives for existing landlords who've already leased over 5 units to individuals exiting homelessness. So that has been an increase. And I will say that has really, when we actually rolled that out, it's really been a means of getting a lot of landlord and property partners to inquire that want to know more about what they can do to assist in housing individuals that are exiting homelessness. We also have our minor repairs funding, which is something that's new. We rolled out the minor repairs funding, so if there's a property owner that may need some carpet or some paint or something minor in order to get a unit ready and to make it habitable, we're going to provide up to $2,500 per unit to help them get that unit on board, as long as they're agreeing and they're, signing a contract agreeing to lease to someone exiting homelessness. Also, we're assisting with application fees and security deposits. Many times our service providers have expressed the fact that when they try to get a individual into a unit, they're unable to pay those application fees, be it $30, whatever the case may be. So we are able to provide up to $500 to help out with those app fees and security deposits. Besides that, the furniture incentive has rolled out. We have identified a furniture partner that we're going to be partnering with. So individuals that are coming through this landlord engagement incentive program will also be able to, those clients will be able to have furniture, one-time furniture incentive. And so they'll be getting new furniture, and those case managers and housing navigators will be able to help them in picking out through the list of what furniture it is that they need. A lot of times that's something that is not available to them once they are in housing. They don't have a bed, they don't have a couch. So we're really excited about that, really excited. And besides that, just the normal incentives of being able to have the mediation through the Conflict Resolution Center and those wraparound service from our service providers. So really excited about what we're doing, and we're just currently working on increasing the amount of housing units that are available, and just really partnering with our service providers to get the information out to them so that we can all, be trying to find new property owners, new landlords, and all be on the same page. So thank you guys so much. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I have a question. How many landlords do we currently have in this program, leasing out how many units? And if we need to expand that, I had come up with an idea about the landlords that are on the fence about it. Why not meet some of these people? We're not all we're not bad people. And I think if the landlords could meet some of us, it might increase the program a little bit. But I'd like to know how many landlords, my original question was, how many landlords are a part of this and representing how many units?
Okay, give me just a second. I want to give you guys actual accurate information. And I can give you information up to December 31st, 2022, since we just had the end of January. Currently working on those numbers, I'm sorry. I had it pulled up, my computer closed out.
As she's looking that up, I'm going to go to, out of the interest of time, Kanitha.
I was looking for my cue that the mic was on. But to what Ms. Vicky said, I saw a tenant make a resume, and I thought that was just awesome. She made her whole tenant profile, and excuse me, it was for landlord engagement. And so she ran down the program and what landlord engagement was, and she's now housed. And so I think that was huge on what she did on her part as a tenant. And also, to what Ms. Vicky said, it sounds like making some type of a fair where they come together and is easily accessible to the tenants, and also it connects the people, you know, the landlord engagement in that type of way, in an outreach type of manner.
Okay, so let me address Ms. Vicky first. As far as the amount of landlords or property partners that we currently have, we have 137, and that's landlords, property partners. That could be a private property owner. That could also be an individual apartment complex. It could also be a property management company. So 137. And as I said, we've done 77 sign-on bonus disbursements. And so, yeah, did that answer that question?
Part of it, how many units 7 landlords represent?
So as far as how many they represent, as of December 31st, 2022, it's 14,061 units. But those units, we have to remember, are publicly accessible units. These individual property partners have agreed that they will lower barriers and allow applicants that are exiting homelessness to apply, but just the regular population can also apply. Anyone publicly can apply. So they're not specific to clients exiting homelessness, but they have agreed to lower barriers to allow them the same opportunities to apply as anyone else would be able to. You're welcome. And so with the $25 million from the ARP funds most recently, one of the goals of landlord engagement, as I'm out engaging with landlords and engaging with our current landlords, is to ask them if they are willing to dedicate. So the increase in these incentives and all of the new incentives are more so incentives to get them to actually dedicate units so that we can have actual dedicated units that we can keep them leased up with clients exiting homelessness as soon as they move someone out. Kanitha, I think that did you have a question?
It was more of a statement of like setting up something where it's a way for those people to connect.
So with that, another that's part of what I do in landlord engagement is hosting events so that landlords can. As a matter of fact, we had a landlord celebration in December where I hosted that event. We hosted landlords. All of the landlords were able to come together, those that were able to make it, to talk about the new incentives that were being rolled out, for them to discuss any concerns. There's also, I'm pretty much available. Landlord engagement is available to them 24/7. There's a dedicated landlord support line for them to contact me if they have any questions. As we're planning the year and working through the next few months of ramping up our landlord engagement efforts, the plan is to have more landlord events that are in different areas where we're inviting landlords to come out, maybe at a library or something like that. So those are part of the landlord engagement efforts. So that's part of what we're doing now. What you said about your tenant, I would love to be able to see some of that information. Any ideas, anything that anyone has, any property owners that you guys do know of or you're aware of, please refer them to me. I do have some cards and some information here. And there's also in your packets, I think that there is a document that lists the incentives, and the phone number for landlord support is at the bottom. So I can be reached at that number as well.
Sheila, do you have and then we're going to try to wrap it up, because if you all have individual questions, I think, because it is a story of progress, you all can definitely connect with her, and we can move forward in that way. Yes, ma'am.
The question I had is in reference to the $500 assistance. Mm-hmm. Is that only for properties that a person is applying for that are already in the landlord engagement? Or is that anybody that's homeless that needs assistance with application fees for any property that they're applying for?
No, that's for, it has to be a property owner or landlord or, partner that has signed up to be a member of the Low Barrier Housing Collective and has stated that they're going to lower barriers.
Understandable.
Right.
Do you know a number of units that have been dedicated? Do we have that
No, that's what we're currently working on, trying to get properties to dedicate units.
Awesome progress story.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I think there was one last comment. Deanna?
It's an unrelated comment, but thank you for your energy. This was really tremendous to hear, and I'm very excited. And people that I know that are renovating some houses in some places, I will definitely be sharing this with them today. That is my accountability commitment to the work that you all are doing. My story of progress, if I may.
Absolutely.
I just want to give a shout out to the MHED team, particularly Sally Lott. I asked her to provide a presentation on coordinated entry to, thank you, Sally, to a group of healthcare providers who had no idea of this concept of coordinated entry and are directly working with individuals experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity, and they were tremendously grateful. So as you were talking about strategy and what we can do individually in terms of increasing knowledge and awareness of CE, and even, I think the follow-up conversation will be actually having a CE specialist to work directly with these organizations. We're determining whether they need to be entering into HMIS. I don't know, that'll be a conversation for later, but to know that there's this direct opportunity to match the clients and patients that they serve, and they had never heard of this, it was very, very much appreciated. So thank you.
Good job. Yes, thank you. Are there any other closing comments before we adjourn our February meeting?
Decker.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to open the conversation to possibly changing the time for the Homeless Planning Council meetings to start at 8:30. I do recognize that in the past couple of months, we have been able to start around 8:30 and still end at 10. So I would like to propose that we go back to an hour and a half time meeting that starts at 8:30 and ends at 10, because normally we're all just sitting here waiting for 30 minutes. So that's my motion, if that is.
Is there a second? So we have a motion from Sheila Decker to move the meeting from 8:30 to 10 a.m. There was a second by Jeff Gibson. And are you ready for any discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor, please indicate. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you all. So just to let you know, if you're looking at your upcoming dates, we know we have February 22nd for the special call meeting related to the collaborative applicant, but at our March 8th meeting, which is our next HPC board meeting, we will be meeting at 8:30, and we will be back here in Metro Council chambers. And so also just be mindful of the other updates, dates that are on your agenda. So thank you all so much. And yes.
I just wanted to say that Catherine Knowles is in the hospital, and that's why she's not here today. She had planned hip surgery and then at physical therapy experienced a pulmonary embolism, lost consciousness, and they had to do CPR a number of times. She now has 11 broken ribs, but she's alive and somewhat well. I went to visit her yesterday, but please keep her in your thoughts. Thank you.
So just to let you know, I'm in communication with Susie in terms of what support she may need from this board. Once she's settled, then perhaps, some sort of something will be sent to her on behalf of the board, and I will take care of that. Any other questions, concerns?
She was at St. Thomas in a step-down unit yesterday, but she was moving to a new room, but she's at Ascension St. Thomas, Midtown.
And just be mindful, some of the, I don't know what the visitations are, but I would ask that you all kind of coordinate that with Susie so she can do that through the family as well. So with that being said, yes, let's keep her in our thoughts, and we are adjourned for the February meeting, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.